Today we are in the best preserved medieval city in the world, Carcassonne, France. This city oozes medieval charm and has a fascinating history. As you walk its narrow streets, you can't help but feel like you're back in time, to an era with knights and kings, peasants, and mythology. Join me on an adventure as we learn about and explore one of the most fascinating destinations in France and the world. Hey everyone, JP here, and welcome back to another episode of Project Gaia. Today we are in a very special place. This is Carcassonne, France. Now Carcassonne, a lot of people have not heard of Carcassonne, and it's really a shame because it is the best preserved medieval city in the world. So it's in southern France, kind of south-central, southwestern France, between Toulouse and Narbonne. So it's in the south-central region, just north of the Pyrenees, not too far from Spain. Now, anyways, this place is amazing. It is filled with medieval architecture, castles, walls, just medieval homes everywhere, wells, squares, and it really is a fascinating place to have on your bucket list in life. And a lot of people don't know about this. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you the best things to do and see when you're here in Carcassonne, as well as I'm going to teach you a lot about the city's history and what makes it so special for this part of France and for medieval historians. So let's head in. The entire medieval city of Carcassonne is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and for good reason. The city is steeped in millennia of history and offers the visitor the opportunity to really step back in time and be surrounded by a living history museum. The city was founded in the 6th century BC by the Gauls and has witnessed the passage of time under the occupation of several different civilizations. The Romans fortified the city, laying the foundations of its iconic double-walled ramparts. During the medieval era, the city flourished as a key stronghold for marauding invaders, protected by its 53 watchtowers, making it one of the most formidable fortresses in Europe. The city played a pivotal role in the 13th century during the Albigensian Crusade. This crusade was commissioned by Pope Innocent III from 1209 to 1229 to crush the Cathars, which were a sect of Christians that flourished in this part of France, but of whom rejected certain teachings of the Catholic Church, including the idea that God was incarnate in Jesus, rather that Jesus was an angel with a phantom body. They believed the physical world was inherently evil and created by the evil spirit or devil, and did not believe in military service, the power of the Catholic priesthood, and did not consume any animal products. Over the years, the city played a key pivotal role in trade as it was located on the main trade route in southern France between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, which was the shortest overland route between the two bodies of water. However, by the 17th century, the political, military, and economic importance of the city began to wane, until in the 19th century when the architect and city planner Viollet-le-Duc undertook a meticulous restoration of the city, reviving its medieval splendor. Make sure you walk around the outer walls, and this is the first level of fortification to the city. Not only do you get amazing views of the surrounding countryside, but through these walls are several secret entrance points through the backside of the medieval citadel. So one thing that you're going to notice when you're going along the walls along Carcassonne is these slits in basically every 5 feet. And why have slits? Why not just have an open circle or window? So the slits are made perfectly to both watch out and to shoot a bow and arrow, right? So this is at a time before there are guns, right? And this served as protective walls, so you don't want a giant window around you. You want it just enough to see, right? And then be able to shoot if need be, right? So it's a protective defense measure, but also to look out. And it's just amazing because you have this history all around you in every location when you're here in Carcassonne. I recommend you have an early start on your big adventure to Carcassonne. If you get into the city early enough, meaning before 10 a.m., you can have it almost entirely to yourself. This allows you to really immerse yourself in the amazing beauty of the medieval lanes and quaint shops and cafes. The city is amazingly quiet in the morning, and you can hear the gentle rings of the church bells and shopkeepers opening their businesses for the day. It is a meditative experience and makes you feel connected to the intense and fascinating history of this amazingly intact medieval city. So a must-see when you're here in Carcassonne is the Basilique Saint-Nazaire, right? Also known as the Cathedral of Carcassonne. Now, this amazing cathedral, or basilica, was built in 1247, so it's coming up on its 800th birthday. And the church is open all day from like 9 to 5 p.m. and you can go in there and see some of the most amazing stained glass windows in France and in Europe. And it just has this really medieval feel. I mean, it's so foreboding and interesting and powerful. So let's head in. Visiting Basilique Saint-Nazaire is a must-do in Carcassonne and is one of the oldest intact churches in France. Its grand Gothic and Romanesque architecture are truly awe-inspiring, and one cannot help but feel connected to a higher power in this amazingly beautiful human testament to love of God and an afterlife. The cathedral brings a sense of peace, hope, and solitude, but also senses of glory, amazement, and intrigue. So one thing that you have to remember is that these beautiful stained glass windows inside this basilica serve two purposes. Now, yes, they're beautiful, right? And it kind of shows mankind's devotion to God, right? But the second thing is they serve a functional purpose, right? So if you think about it, this church was built almost 800 years ago, and the vast majority of the population were illiterate. They could not read or write, right? So when you go into a lot of these medieval Catholic churches, what the stained glass windows also prove to do is to tell the stories of the Bible and of the church's teachings. So when people are in Mass, they can look up and understand more because they couldn't read the Bible. Another thing that a lot of people don't remember is that Catholic Masses before about the 1960s, 1970s were in Latin. So a lot of people didn't know what the priest was saying. So these windows kind of serve that purpose, to tell the story of the Bible. Carcassonne is a small city and could be traversed fully on foot in less than an hour. But the city is jam-packed with interesting sights and storybook-like architecture that is sure to keep you walking back and forth all day. Peer into the windows, check out the shops, and walk in the footsteps of medieval knights, peasants, and clergy. This historic city is inspiring. The whole thing looks like some sort of made-up fairy tale land. And exploring this amazing UNESCO World Heritage Site is truly a pleasure that will touch the heart of the inner kid in you who loved pretending to be a knight or princess living in a castle. Okay, now here we are at the main attraction here in Carcassonne. This is Chateau et Rempart, which basically means castle on walls. So this is the big giant castle that you see when you approach the city, right? So we're gonna go in there, we're gonna learn all about its history and why it's so special to this area of France. And you gotta understand, in medieval times, it wasn't a centralized government, right? So it was a bunch of little kingdoms and they had to defend themselves, right? So there's tons of walls and it's really built for defense and to defend this interior city, this beautiful interior city that we are inside now. So let's head in. Carcassonne Castle was the seat and symbol of feudal and royal power during the medieval era and dominates the city. The castle has its beginnings in as early as the mid-1100s and has been expanded over an approximately 300-year period until in the early 1400s you have what you see here today. This formidable castle with its extensive ramparts and iconic watchtowers brings you back to an amazingly preserved medieval setting and is one of the most intact, beautiful, and interesting castles in the entirety of Europe. Walk in the footsteps of knights as you climb your way through the narrow stone staircases to the foreboding ramparts. These medieval walls were one of many fortifications protecting the castle and city as a whole. And as you look out here, you will notice a circular tower, where the ticket office is now. These locations served as a gathering point for soldiers and knights in the event that there was a siege. Next, you will make your way into the watchtowers. These were designed to watch out over the surrounding countryside and provided multiple levels and trapdoors to hoist up weapons. You will then make your way across the wooden bridges. It was from these strategic locations that knights and soldiers would shoot arrows and crossbows and even throw scalding hot oils and fire onto marauding invaders below. They served to provide shelter and protection from the enemy. As you soak in the history and fascinating militaristic past of this foreboding castle, don't forget to take in the beautiful views of the city below. These castle walls are one of the most extensive and best preserved in Europe and circumnavigate the city below. Also, check out the fascinating archaeological museum housed within the castle. All of these items were found in and around Carcassonne and provide archaeologists and historians with important clues for how people lived during the medieval era, but also how the castle was utilized over its almost 900-year history. What I love about Carcassonne Castle is the storybook-like feel of the whole place. If you have kids that are into knights, kings, queens, princes, and princesses, they're going to absolutely love this place. I am always amazed walking in the footsteps of sites that are several centuries years old because I like to imagine the stories of the people that utilized these amazing spaces when they were fully functional rather than a tourist site. What was the guard experiencing when he saw an army in the distance? What was it like working in the castle? What was it like being imprisoned in the castle? All these stories echo through the walls of this place and give it a legendary heart that is as reflective as it is beautiful. So one place that you must check out when you're here in Carcassonne is Rue Croix Maillevée. So this is kind of the main thoroughfare when you enter through the city. Now, what's great about this is if you love medieval stuff, which I'm assuming you do if you watch this movie and you're going to Carcassonne, this is a place where there are tons of medieval merchandise and souvenirs. It kind of resembles the Shambles in York. If you've seen my York video, check that out. That's also a very medieval city as well. It kind of has that vibe, so definitely check this out when you're here. Medieval heads are going to love Rue Croix Maillevée, walking through the winding centuries-old lanes and popping your head into all the fun and interesting medieval-themed stores. It is a little kitschy, but what tourist center isn't? If you want to bring home a piece of the fairy tale fantasy world of Carcassonne, this is a good place to find something. As you meander through this commercial corridor, don't forget to look up. The stores are cool, yes, but look up at the authentic medieval structures above you. The street is truly beautiful and transports you to a place in time that challenges your norm. Next, check out Place du Chateau. This is one of the oldest plazas in the city and serves as an attractive gathering point for tourists and locals alike. It is quaint and nostalgic, filled with cafes, a fountain, and more quirky and interesting boutiques. Now, if you're looking for a break between your big touring of all the medieval sites in the city, you're probably going to want to get lunch or some drinks. And a good place to do that is here. This is called Place Marceau. So it's like a plaza, and there are tons of restaurants around. It's good for lunch or dinner. Now, if you're not familiar with France, you got to remember, things are pretty quiet before about noon, right? So at noon to 2, all the restaurants open for lunch. Then there's kind of another little break, and then things open kind of from 7 to about 11 p.m. It's a little bit later than in the United States, how they eat and drink. But this is an excellent place to grab lunch in between or dinner later when you're done. Another thing to note is there are little cafes, restaurants all over, as you probably have seen. Don't discount those, but this is just kind of a main gathering place, so it kind of has a really good vibe. So definitely check Place Marceau out when you're here. So a good thing to get to eat when you're in France in general is the croquet monsieur. So basically what it is, it's a sandwich with cheese on the top and the bottom, and then they have like a ham in the middle. It's really good, and you're gonna like it. Okay, so some tips and tricks when you're here in Carcassonne. 1, take it slow. There's not a ton of sites. A lot of it is just to explore the amazing beauty of the medieval city, right? So you don't feel like you have to like get to every museum and everything really fast, because there's only a couple sites, but the real draw of Carcassonne is the amazing architecture and the medieval vibe of it all, right? So definitely do that. Number 2, everywhere takes credit cards. So you don't really need to have cash. It does help. Number 3, if you are an American, you are used to paying about a 20% tip whenever you go to a restaurant, right? In France and in Europe in general, they don't expect a tip, only for exceptional service. So, you know, if I usually leave like 1 or 2 euros, but you don't have to leave a tip. So it makes going out to eat extremely affordable, right? It really adds to it. And think about this too. Things are cheaper here, right? So you can go out and have a beautiful big lunch for like 20 euros, right? It'd probably be like double the same value in the United States. The next one, make sure you bring your walking shoes. These streets are very, craggly, stone. They're not easy streets to navigate in, maybe like high heels or whatever if you're a woman. In France and in Europe in general, the smoking culture is kind of how I imagine it was in the 80s, or like it was when I remember in the 90s as a little kid. So smoking is everywhere. When you go to a restaurant, they're going to be smoking. So if you don't want that, go inside. I mean, I don't know how much smoking bothers you, but smoking is everywhere if you eat outside. I mean, people don't think anything to just smoke and light up next to you. It's a big part of the culture here. So, just keep that in mind. Most people know a little English, but I would brush up on my French just to get an idea and to kind of navigate better. It's very important in France to start the conversation in French. If you think about it, if somebody was traveling to the United States and they just started speaking in their native language, you would be like, what? Almost like a little rude, right? So if you start a conversation in French, or you order in French, they're gonna be really happy about that. And usually they'll just default to English when they see that you're struggling, because it's not an easy language. And then from there, you just go through it. But I would brush up on my French and know a little bit of French before you get here, because this isn't Paris, right? So not everybody speaks English. So it's kind of like you gotta, know how to navigate a little bit in French. So when you're in Carcassonne, you're going to notice tons of these old wells. So these wells are almost 1,000 years old. So it's hard to imagine, but think of a life where there's no indoor plumbing, right? Where do you get your water from? Well, either go to the river if you live in a rural place, or a well is provided in like a center. And so people would go to the well, get their water for the day, for cooking, for bathing, for drinking, and bring it back to one of these medieval houses. So it's pretty cool to see. They're all over the place. They're covered, obviously, so you can't like fall in them. But some of them you could actually see down. You could see all the way down to where they used to get the water. So we're here on a beautiful afternoon, right? I mean, we're seeing people having lunch, exploring the city, going to these cool little shops and souvenir stores, and having a good time with kids and dogs and smiles and drinking and everything. However, we have to remember we are in a medieval city, and since this is the best preserved medieval city in the world, right? They need to show the darkness of the Middle Ages, right? Because it isn't just all happy and good and, you know, I have music playing behind me, right? It has a dark past, right? So one thing that the city does very well is it has 2 museums that are devoted to the story of this dark time, right? So the first one we're going to go to is the Museum of Torture. So that teaches you how they tortured people and did all these things and why they did these things. And then the second one is the Museum of the Inquisition. So this is about the Inquisition and, you know, how people, if they deviated from the Catholic Church, what we wouldn't think would be a big issue nowadays was a big issue and could be punishable by death. So it could be anything as simple as not going to mass enough, homosexuality, you know, practicing sorts of magic or non-church things. So it's very interesting, and we're gonna go in both of those. So let's head there. The Museum of Torture and the Museum of the Inquisition invite you into the underbelly and darker world of Carcassonne, and the medieval world in general. It shows artifacts depicting the devices that were used to torture people and explains the reasons for this torture. Countless souls lost their lives or went through great agony, usually because they challenged the status quo of the time. These museums are a bit gruesome, but really help you understand the danger and, dare I say, excitement of the medieval world. If you're really into medieval merchandise, check out some of the higher end stores on the Rue Pro-Merveille. You can get extremely intricate fantasy items and even high-end swords and suits of armor. But I don't know how you'd carry it in your suitcase. Now, when you're here in Carcassonne and you want to check out an area that's a little less touristy, you actually have to exit the walled city. And then you come down to this area called Rue Treval, which is where I am now. So this is a little bit more affordable food, a little bit more local, and a lot more quiet, right? So if you want like kind of a quieter vibe, have lunch down here or dinner down here, this is a cool place to go. And it's about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the walled city. At the end of Rue Treval is the Pont Vieux Bridge. This pedestrian and bike-only bridge dates back to the 13th century and offers the visitor one of the most beautiful and dramatic views of the medieval hilltop city, walls, and castle above. Also, check out La Bastide, or the New City. I wouldn't really call it a new city. It still has a large amount of medieval architecture, just less winding and narrow streets. This part of town is much more local and is beautiful in and of itself. It has a fantastic central plaza that's perfect for your morning coffee and croissant, plus several boutiques, restaurants, and cafes that are worth a look. You also walk through this area on the way to the Carcassonne train station, which can connect you to Toulouse, Narbonne, Montpellier, and eventually Bordeaux, Paris, Provence, and the French Riviera. Also, check out the famous Canal du Midi, which is a water route between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic that passes through southern France. Okay guys, this was Carcassonne, France. Now I had an amazing time showing you guys this fantastically maintained medieval city. It is just filled with history, and it really is something that you should have on your bucket list in life. Leave me your comments below. Let me know if there's anything I missed or anything you'd like to see next time. And guys, if you like this kind of content, please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video, share this video, and until next time guys, take care. Bye.